All right, in three. Oh, no, actually, not three, two, one. We're live. Welcome in, everybody, to Pack a Day live with Mike Wahle. We are excited to be here. Sorry, we had some technical issues as we were trying to get in, but we are all set now. Obviously, we've got a very interesting Packers Cowboys 40-40 tie to discuss. Before we get into that, Mike, how are you doing?
I'm great. Yeah, I stayed up late to watch the overtime here. And what kind of a very both teams have been. It's like that trade showed up, and we talked about the trade, and then they both like the defense in Dallas sucks at everything, and the offense or the defense for Green Bay didn't get the pass rush. It was kind of a weird night.
It was a very odd night. I definitely did not have on my bingo card Green Bay putting 40 plus points or 40 points on the board and not winning that game, certainly with the way that the defense had been playing up until that point. Let's start with Landon's question here. He said, I didn't see the same attack mentality last night from the defense. Felt like they played lazy. The Nixon not coming back to the Dak prayer. Did you notice any laziness throughout the game? I guess just more in general, what did you see from the defense that made it a struggle in this one?
I think Dak was just on one. Yeah, I think sometimes that happens. You play with good football players, and quarterbacks in particular can just have nights where they're on. They've got a really good receiver in George Pickens, and he's not one of those, like, he makes people look lazy because he's really good. I mean,
Yeah.
especially when when Hobbs goes out and Valentine goes in, and obviously he's 24 been playing really well for the Green Bay Packers over the last couple of weeks. But that guy's an elite receiver. He showed that a couple of years prior. And I think what happens sometimes is, and we actually saw this with the Michael Penix Jr. played this way against the Washington Commanders yesterday. Like, sometimes you just run into a buzzsaw, and the Packers look, they ran into a buzzsaw yesterday. And for whatever reason, things that like Evan Williams played the game of his life last night. Quay had another good game.
Yep.
Guys are rallying to the football. We missed a couple tackles here and there, but we're not missing tackles like you said maybe in 2023 or 2022. Like, that's not what happened last night. Dak Prescott played really well, put the ball in the spot, and when you have, like, Jake Ferguson's a good tight end. They've got a couple good guys in the backfield that can run for north and south. But George Pickens he's a big time football player, probably better than the guy that preceded him. And when that happens, and you get any kind of like pocket presence, and they did a good job, like, how many times did Micah Parsons win the one-on-one yesterday and get chipped out, or get a second guy or a third guy, like, or they just got muddled up got a little too cute with a couple of their stunts. But if you give a guy who just feels like, Dak felt like he had something to prove last night. You could tell. But you could tell with all the Micah Parsons trade and this and that, and who's the face of the defense, who's the face of the team, what's going to matter the most. Like, he came out and played like he had something to prove last night. I don't know that he's, for me, like, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he looked really, really good last night.
I said the same thing in the post-game show of, like, just going through my key takeaways, like, also give Dak his flowers because he was freaking incredible in this game. And he had answers to everything. I thought his checks at the line were good. He knew exactly where to go with the ball. For a defense that had really kind of confused some of the previous quarterbacks, he just seemed to know where to go with the ball every single time. I thought he was fantastic. So kudos to him. What did you think? And I know there's going to be a lot of questions about this here. What did you obviously think about the end game scenario? I know that's going to be a big point of discussion of Green Bay running out of time basically at the end, not really getting any opportunity to score a touchdown, almost letting the clock run out to the point of not even having a field goal attempt. It felt very mismanaged, disorganized, and let's just say frustrating.
I think at the end of the first half, I think at the end of the game, there's some head scratching decisions whether or not you want to go for it on 4th and 2 on the 49-yard line. You take the delay of game penalty earlier in the game. The end of the actual end game scenario that you're referencing, Rasheed Walker got beat. Like, they could have had, if he gets pushed into the quarterback and he takes another half step hitch, the game's over, period. And, as not a game management expert, but, as just a guy who plays enough football to understand, like, if the clock's at 8 and you're trying to throw into the, 20-yard pass, and you're teetering right on the area of, like, if something goes bad, the game's over.
Yep.
And I thought, honestly, he was going to go 1, 2, 3, nope, and chuck it. And the fact that he double pumped it, you're just going, like, maybe they don't know what's happened. I mean, it was another palms up moment and kind of like a series of palms up moments. I think one thing that's just like to maybe speak broader to this. I think one thing that is starting to happen with this team, and maybe people are talking about Matt LaFleur's play calling around those scenarios, is that they don't have a very good sense of what they do well up front to get a free yard. And because they don't feel like on that 4th and 2, like the run, like listen, the best thing they did last night was run the ball 3 times in a row when they got the ball down on the 2-yard line and they had to back it up to the 5 because of the 1-yard line backed up to the 5. That's like the best thing they did all night, in my opinion, because it's like, all right, we're not going to get cute. We're going to force this ball to be run into the end zone, because they just haven't really been. And 2 of the plays weren't good, but they haven't really been able to do that. And they don't have anything they can hang their hat on. And when you watch this game and go through the tape, there's still a lot. And listen, we know that they're like Zach Tom not being in, there's a really big deal. Like, moving, shuffling guys around, Jenkins at center, again, kind of a night where you're like, not fantastic. And then the snap count thing is plastered all over this game again, with both tackles looking in, getting beat inside, center having to get back so far that he can't get any momentum on the run block or the pass blocking game. They're on different levels with the guard and centers. Like, there's so much going on within those important short yardage or like really important key factor plays in the game that, again, if you're Matt LaFleur, it's like the play sheet gets blurry a little bit. It's hard to figure out what you're good at.
No, I totally agree. As far as like that end game scenario, so things go pretty south pretty quick. You've got the wide receiver screen that gets immediately blown up by Diggs. Good play by Diggs. Obviously, Dobbs doesn't get the block on that one too. You have the little check down to Wilson that probably, and I know this is hard in the moment, but probably just needed to be thrown away there rather than completed. But tough in the moment, especially the way Wilson was breaking some tackles, and maybe he can make something happen, I guess. And I think the real big issue is there's no urgency after that play. You see kind of Tucker Kraft just kind of jogging back, and Jordan's kind of looking to the sidelines, or what are we doing? Where are we going? It just felt very rudderless, and it didn't seem like there was any intentionality to what was going on in that situation. And to your point, like on that play, even if that deflection goes up instead of just immediately hitting the ground, game's over. If like there's so many different ways that is game over. And they got incredibly lucky with just it bouncing immediately to the ground. And the number 2, with just thankful for the clock operator that they actually stopped it on the road.
I was shocked.
I was stunned, Mike. I was beyond stunned. I bet, I don't know if that guy or girl has a job today after that. I like, seriously, on the road, you get that second stop like that. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that.
Yeah, it was my first thought as the clock stopped was like, why is it stopped? Like it should have run off. The game should be over. It was interesting yesterday, just again speaking broadly, how many screens and behind the line of scrimmage passes that we threw. I thought that early on they were doing it like they did a good job of using our motion and misdirection to create great opportunities in the screen game. Now we didn't always block it well.
Right.
But whether it was the bubbles, whether it was the tight end screens or the running back screens, like we threw, and there's like 87 plays in the game, right? But so there's a lot of opportunities, but there was a lot of that thrown at the team last night. And the Dallas Cowboys, all the zone they play, like, there's going to be certain things open when the Dallas Cowboys are playing that zone coverage. Like there's going to be quarterback scrambles. There's going to be a ton of checkdowns. There's going to be screen game all day. Like, that, like, that's just how you want to attack the defense, and they put those overhang players in positions where it's like, yeah, you want to keep doing that. And again, listen, like we're saying all this and they scored 40 points.
Yep.
So, you know what I mean? It's like but when it comes down to those critical plays, you still have to have something you hang your hat on. And we talked about it last week in the loss. We're talking about it this week in the victory or in the tie. There just doesn't seem to be this definitive, I know I can count on this to work 9 times out of 10, and therefore I can hang my hat on it, and I can make those, kind of critical decisions. The other thing that you kind of look at is like, how many catches did Dobbs actually have? Did he have 3 for 3 touchdowns? I mean, like what I'm looking at the stats real quick. He had 6 catches.
Yep.
I mean, this guy's a goddamn machine. It's like I don't know if they have a special section on the play sheet for him, but they should. Like in these critical situations, you know what I mean? It just kind of we're just kind of figuring that out. And we talked about it in the preseason when we drafted Matthew Golden 1. It's like, okay, maybe these guys are going to get reshuffled as far as like what we think their skill sets are, where Matt LaFleur thinks they fit into his offense specifically. Maybe they're going to get like this audition over the first quarter of the season to like, okay, you do this well, you do that well, etc. And maybe we're still kind of in the middle of that. And again, it sounds weird because we scored 40, but it does feel that way a little bit, not only with maybe that receiving room, but maybe broadly the offensive line, how the run game is going to go, etc.
Yeah, it does still feel like they're very much figuring some things out through a quarter of the season. Hopefully the bye week coming up helps with that quite a bit. Dave asks, Andy and Mike, what is the ceiling of this team with Matt LaFleur as a head coach? As fans, we talk so much about a quarterback ceiling, but I wonder about Matt LaFleur's decision-making and game management. As you can probably imagine, some frustration in Packers land with Matt LaFleur from I think just kind of, the end game scenario specifically, maybe not going for the kill, being a little bit too conservative. But I think that's probably a little bit of where that question's coming from.
Yeah, but let's go back. Dallas scored 42 as well, right? Like Dak Prescott's on one. So if I'm Matt LaFleur, I'm going like if you're going to say, are you more like Dan Campbell or more like Matt LaFleur? I'm more like Dan Campbell. I'm going to tell my offense, like, you get 4 downs once we pass the 40 going out. Like, you get 4 downs every play. I don't care. As long as it's not 4th and 20. But if you're on the 49, for example, you're in that 4th and 2 on the 49, we take the 5-yard penalty on the delay of game. The flip side to that, as an example, is, well, if they get the ball back and Dak's, or we're in a good situation right now and they haven't done anything, or we feel like Dak's on one and we're not doing a very good job. We lost Nate Hobbs in the secondary. We just don't feel good about our matchups. And we're not getting pressure on the quarterback at the clip we should. I think we only had they gifted Micah Parsons a sack on that play, whether it was or not, I'm not sure. But that is the only sack of the game, right, on their side. So we're not really looking at this like having the dominant performance up front that we thought we were going to have, having the shutdown run game that we thought we were going to have. Like there's nothing about what our defense did that suggested that we're going to stop them from the 50-yard line. And like for fans out there, that there are statistics, and I don't know about specifically with Dallas, but for the NFL, there's team statistics that like if you start on the 20-yard guide going out, you have a 13% chance of scoring the touchdown. And it goes up like 10 or 15% every 10 yards. By the time you get to the 50, it's almost like you're guaranteed points. So like if you don't get it at the 49 going out, you're gifting the other team like 4.5 points. You just got to figure out, how that's going to play out over the course of a game. So those are the things that, especially an analytic or a younger coach now that's, kind of in this mold is going to be thinking about maybe a little bit more than old school guys. Whether you'd agree with it or not is kind of irrelevant, right? That's just, that's the way the NFL is now.
I think the other thing is, even when you put the analytics, it's not taking every team into those analytics. So for this example, like you say, Dak is playing well. At that time, they held him 3-and-out at the initial one, and I think this was their second drive or whatever. But at the 50 or at the, in your territory, Brandon Aubrey's already in field goal range. Like he is, when you turn the ball over there, like he's already making that field goal. At least that's the sort of the idea that you have to have in your mind. So if you don't get that first down, you've just given them point. Even if you take them 3-and-out on the next 3 plays, Brandon Aubrey makes, at least is attempting, and based on what we've seen from him, is probably making that field goal. So if I'm going against a crappy kicker and I've got the defense playing well, maybe I'm more apt to go for it on that 4th and 2, knowing like, hey, if we get a 3-and-out, we'll get the ball back and we didn't give up any points. But in that situation, they get, 3-4 yards on first down, go incomplete. He's still kicking the field goal and he's probably making it in that scenario. So I just think that all goes into the sauce as well.
Yeah, for sure. But listen, I'm certainly not trying to be like a Matt LaFleur apologist today. But if you watch the tape, guys are getting beat on single blocks in the run game. And so if it's 4th and 2 and you're like, well, I have Josh Jacobs and you don't, it's like, well, yeah, but our guys are missing up front, or linebackers are shooting through, or safeties are coming on blitzes. So and we're not doing a great job of accounting for them. And a lot of the yards that were made, particularly in the second half were the result of like Matt LaFleur doing a great job of being a tendency breaker and going up and running into the strength as opposed to away from it, which he did the entire first half, when I think he averaged less than 2 or 3 yards a carry again. So they are making adjustments. They are making good decisions. Whether or not you agree with, whether he wants to go for it on fourth and whatever. I think with this offense, I think the offense would prefer to stay out there. I think the defense would prefer that the offense stays out there. So that's something they have to deal with kind of internally. But there are a lot of reasons behind kind of decisions that coaches make. I don't think Matt LaFleur has never really come off to me as this like really conservative play caller. I know it seems that way right now with the fourth down stuff, but just in the way that he designs the offense and the options and opportunities that he has on any given play to create a yard. It's just the whole thing is a little bit perplexing, I suppose.
Yeah, it very much is. It just feels like right now, like I hated the decision to try to throw it right before half. You had the 5-yard false start penalty with 28. It was 26 seconds left. 21 seconds left. 21 seconds left. 1st and 15. Just had the false start penalty. Ball on your own 26-yard line with no timeouts, and you're up by 4. And it's just like after the false start penalty, you just have to kind of. I feel like in that scenario, just be like, all right, this is not going great. We have no timeouts. We need like a 35, 40-yard strike, and then to spike the ball just to get into field goal range. And it's the one thing that they're not going to allow. I don't know. It felt like that was a little bit over aggressive, but again, to your point, not being passive, being aggressive in that situation, that felt a little bit more towards over aggressive, reckless. Then at the end of the game, it felt like that was the opportunity to maybe be more aggressive. And that felt like it was a little bit more passive.
On that play specifically, you're talking about the sack fumble that led to the, okay. So on that play was what was absolutely wild about that whole scenario was, generally speaking, let's say that you believe that they can get into field goal range and that's their goal.
Yep.
What you're going to try to do there is you're going to try to hit make it a quick hitter. So something that they're going to catch on the run. So whether it's a glance route or, some kind of go or fade, some sort of slot action. What you're generally not going to do is catch the ball in shotgun and hit your back foot at 12 yards. The quarterback. So when Rasheed Walker gave up that sack, the guy out, the rusher got a 7-yard width head start, bull rushed him, and then went upfield. And his Jordan Love's foot hit. Nobody hits 12 yards in the NFL. His back foot hit 12 yards. He's so deep that, and then doesn't really have time to step up. And the guy gets a hand on it, and it's like, those are the decisions. To your point, that whole for so many reasons that didn't make sense. If they let's say they hit a glance route, they get it for 15, bang, bang, bang. Now you run up to the line of scrimmage, you can doubt it, you can do whatever you want.
Yep.
But to do a deep, if I'm in the huddle and Brett comes in and he goes, hey, we're running a 7-step drop. It's 1st and 15 with 21 seconds left. And we're up. You're going like, what? There's no, there's a lot of different ways to do this thing, but that was a perplexing play. And I'm always, as an offensive lineman, I'm always like, whenever I see the quarterback's back foot hit 12 in that scenario, I'm like, you guys are just trying to give one up right now. That was asinine.
Yeah. You always have to be cognizant of how deep the quarterback is when you're assessing some of the blame on offensive linemen. You get that deep, and so it's near impossible for an offensive lineman to be able to protect, especially in a wide set like that. So yeah, good luck to anyone trying to do that. And obviously just did not end up well in that scenario. Greg wants to know, what can we do to get consistent on special teams? Any brainstorming solutions here, Mike?
Yeah, we've tried. Listen, we've gone back to this so many times in years prior, and obviously, Rich coming in and being the interim head coach for the Raiders, and we're talking about how great leader he is. The only thing that you can point to with this, and let's start by saying that last week we saw three blocked in 5 minutes of real time. So there's not only the problems that we had with the field goal issue, but we also had some return issues and some coverage issues. Don't get me wrong, but just generally speaking, it seems to me that across the league, this stuff is just not getting the representation it needs in preparation. That's the only thing I can think of. Now, obviously, if you if you sat and watched 100 clips of the kickoff return, if we just wanted to talk about that part of this, which has been a big deal for the Packers, the evolution of that went from initially it was going to be, I think, the original return line when you return the football was like at the 27, and now and then after year one it was like at the 29, so it went up marginally. Now these guys have all figured out like we can get 30, 35, we can get these really, really good returns, and we're going to have a lot of chances for explosives just because they've had a couple years to tweak it, and because of the lack of impact and the lack of full speed play, the coverage team is really at a disadvantage now if the returner has any kind of momentum. So I just think that one, it's set up so that we are getting more returns and the coverage is going to be worse naturally. I think that two, when it comes to the field goal protection, like obviously that in that specific scenario, you're like, you guys not even practicing? Like they just let the alley guy just run right through. It doesn't make any sense, but it's happening all over the league. It's kind of an epidemic right now. And I just think that they're not. We talked about it with Matt LaFleur's teams before Rich was here. It was like, how much time are they actually dedicating, and how serious are play? Like back when I was playing, if you were 6'2", 240 and you were not a starter, it was like, oh man, you're going to be a special teams for life guy, and you better love it, and you better say, hey, I'm making a great paycheck. I get to go smash people in the face. Like you got to really take a lot of pride in it. And I just don't know if that, and I really don't know, but I don't know if that's the case anymore. It doesn't seem that way.
Well, Shane basically asked the question. Question for Mike: do most players in the NFL hate playing special teams and don't care to put 100% effort in?
I don't think that I don't know how to answer the question with everyone. I know that that like back in the day, one thing that was stood up with like Baltimore would have their starters on special teams, and it was a big deal.
Yep.
Because not everybody was doing it, right? So I think and obviously Harbaugh being a special teams guy is probably part of that. But I think that I remember like Steve Smith. You remember think about a lot of really good wide receivers. They started as like a punt return, kickoff return guy, and then when they got like really good at receiver, they're like, I don't want to do that anymore because I don't want to get hurt or whatever. And then they kind of go in special situations, and it's whether it's like a rep count thing or whether it's just like an injury thing, they just decide to stop doing it. So there's obviously, and because they don't really get paid for it, like Devin, Devin Hester is arguably one of the most impactful players in the history of the National Football League, but it took him a while to get that, ascension to the Hall of Fame and all these things because he wasn't a really good defensive back. So there's kind of like we don't value it as much, even though it does get a ton of reps and, this, that, and the other, like the money doesn't flow through the special teams. And because the money doesn't flow through there, just by default, guys, I think generally think maybe this isn't as important as my position that I get to study for 80% of the time I'm at the building.
No, I think that makes a ton of sense. And you can kind of just see it play out that way. And I mean, you get what you emphasize. And I'm not even just saying that from like a coaching standpoint. I'm saying like, hey, if you can be a top linebacker, corner, like when you get a franchise tag for some of those players, the money's pretty high. A franchise, there's special team specialist is not the same amount of money. It's bad money, but it's certainly not the same as the other stuff. You can be an expert at anything else besides teams. You're probably better off kind of focusing on that. There was another one. Oh, it was more offensive line related. I just want to know if the coaches are asking too much of Elton Jenkins, like making the line calls, plus having to look back pre-snap so his head isn't up to catch any late shifts and timing up the snap. You've kind of talked about some of the stuff that they're doing from a silent count standpoint that doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Feels like that was maybe a little bit of an issue here as well, but I'll let you answer the question.
Yeah, it's still a monster issue. I don't understand. It's hard to watch the film knowing that guys are struggling. Like Rasheed Walker, he gets beat a couple times by like an undrafted free agent, and you're like, well, how is that even possible? And then you watch the tape, and he's like, oh, he's actually looking at the football, and these guys are trying to time it up. And then there's one specific play where he looks at the ball, and he's like, wow, he's been looking too long. So he tries to look back and see just if his guys reset or not, and they hike the ball, and then he's laid off the ball, and he gets it's like it's just a never-ending quandary for these guys. And I rarely agree with Chris Collinsworth, but he was talking about it last night on the television, and it just makes you wonder at what point with the Packers coaching staff or players, at what point are they like just being stubborn? because there's so many different ways that have been proven more successful than. I mean, Elton Jenkins last night had some plays where you're like what are you even doing as far as being kind of sudden and aggressive in the manner that we're used to seeing him at the guard position. There's some plays where he's just kind of letting a penetrating, nose tackle or three technique get upfield on the backside blocks because he's just not covering ground or he's being hesitant because I think it's because he's trying to find the guy again.
Right.
And I just don't understand when you've got the center looking between his legs, and you got now both tackles because you got new guys in there looking in at the ball, and they're all doing things not on time, just simultaneously lifting their head up, and then they're all trying to leave and reorient and figure it out. I just don't understand on what planet you go into film the next day and you miss you have 10 bad plays and 9 of them are because of that, and nobody goes, can we at least have a discussion about this? And so it's happened enough now where it's like, I guess this is what we're doing, but it's I think it's difficult for him. I think having to switch positions, I don't think you're asking too much of him. I think that specific thing is affecting a lot of people.
Did you see anything that got any better going from Cleveland to Dallas over the course of that last week? It obviously wasn't as catastrophic, but it felt maybe like that was a little bit more to do. Just Dallas
They don't have much talent.
Yeah, as much talent as Cleveland. So you didn't see any sort of adjustments or anything that went different?
I mean, I remember very specifically an hour ago watching the third quarter and going, there's 2 guys looking in and he's looking with his head between his legs and going, well, this is his name. And I mean, the proof's in the pudding too. When you've got, obviously you've got a player at right tackle who's not your starter, but your starter is at left tackle. And, and Elton Jenkins is a really good football player. But you've got guys getting beat by undrafted free agents, or you're getting beat by lesser players. It's not like Myles Garrett's beating you off the line,
right?
It's not the guy with the number 1 pass rush win rate in the league is beating you off the line. It's a team that if you watch the film from last week, you go, let's count the seconds that the opposing quarterback has to throw whenever he wants to, regardless of what play action, under center play action, drop back, whatever you want, shotgun, right? And our guy is out there, and again, we scored 40 points, so let's not overblow this, but they are kind of struggling to block what I would call average defensive linemen. And when you start thinking, okay, why that could possibly be, the real only rational reason is because they're late to everything. I mean, if it was equal and they knew this, if they're getting off the snap count, they were getting to their spot, they wouldn't lose as much because they're better football players. And so, when you just start taking the emotion out of it and go, okay, well, why is the only rational? What's logical here? It's the snap count.
I don't have a name in mind per se of anything like this. Should Green Bay be in the market for a veteran center around the trade deadline? Would that clean some of that up, allow Elton to move back to guard, maybe allow, Morgan a little bit more time to develop, hopefully you get Zach Tom back, do some of that sort of stuff? Or again, I don't even know if that's going to be something that's feasible, but would that be something that would be of value, or is it just the way that they're playing it anyway? It probably doesn't even help that much.
Well, I don't know a lot of centers in the league that would be playing at a high level in the scenario of the last 2 weeks, specifically with the snap count.
Right.
If we could just track the under center blocks versus the non-under center block, the shotgun blocks, and just see what they are. I don't know what the stats are, but I'm sure he's better under center.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. Okay. So, and then the other thing is when's Aaron Banks coming back? Is he out for the season?
No, he should be back soon, I would think. It doesn't seem like it's going to be something that
so they've kind of made their bed there because Sean Ryan's not going anywhere. Sean Ryan's playing as good as anybody on that line. I don't know you're not going to move him, and he's only going to get better. He's this is his second year starting, or year and a half starting. So I don't know. This is what happens when you take a really good player and you move him to replace him with somebody who's unfortunately he's not playing right now, but he's not quite the player at that position that Elgin was. And now Elgin's not playing quite as well as you projected. Not that he's playing, Josh, you talk about, is he better than Myers or not? Right. And that's kind of where we're at. Right. And right now you're like, given all of these things, let's not talk about why, but just basic output, you're kind of like,
Yeah.
kind of the same. Yeah. And so he's got to pick up his game, I think, a little bit. But also this, I really, I don't want to understate how ridiculous or how much effect the snap count is having on their play on road games.
Yeah, no, hopefully it obviously gets better at home coming up against Cincinnati, but they're obviously going to have to figure it out on the road long term, especially if they can't win games to get home games in the playoffs, which is, kind of going to be important too. Sawthorne said the secondary got exposed really bad when there wasn't much pass rush. What did you see from the secondary in this one?
George Pickens is really, I mean, there's a ton of check down. Both teams ran screens, check downs, bubbles. There was a lot of that down. They're running some deep routes, and everybody kind of assumed that, or I certainly did, that Micah was going to have a kind of a big game. I know there was a little bit of back issue there. The reality is the Green Bay Packers play a defense where you're trying not to get beat over the top, and you're going to rally tackle, and they did that in bunches. And listen, there's always big plays in these football games when you have 5-star elite level athletes. One guy's throwing to a 5. There's just plays to be made, and at the end of that play, you look at it and you go, every once in a while, a really good athlete's going to get beat by another really good athlete, whether it's on the comeback at the end of the game, whether it's by any one of George Pickens' plays, like busted coverages. Are we kind of, do we have our eyes in the right spot? We got 2 guys going to the flat on some of this. There's a lot of kind of that going on. I think the thing that was a little bit surprising was that the pass rush just wasn't quite maybe what we thought it would be before. And when you have a veteran quarterback, and Dak's like regular season, Dak has proven this for years.
Yep.
That he is one of those quarterbacks that can have a 10-play drive. He can have a 15-play drive. If he needs to throw, 10 checkdowns to get down the field and throw, 1 or 2 crossing routes or digs, or, nothing over 25 yards. He doesn't need a chunk play. He doesn't need an explosive play to get a touchdown. Like, he's one of those players in the regular season that can do that. Not everybody can. So this is one of those situations, at least in my estimation, where you ran into kind of a buzzsaw where we're doing a lot of the stuff that we're doing it the way we want. Yeah, of course, if you don't have a pass rush, you don't have a secondary, and vice versa. And that's kind of been the story with the Dallas Cowboys, quite frankly, is like, it was explained very eloquently last night. If you don't have a pass rush, then you got to play, and you can't play man. You only got one option, and you better play off and just make them go down the field and not make mistakes, because otherwise you're going to get scored on a ton. And unfortunately, I think that's every once in a while you find a quarterback that can do that at a high level, and Dak certainly did that.
Yeah, he certainly did. Felt like every time they got pressure, guys were playing a little bit off. It felt like every time they were playing on, the pressure didn't get there. It didn't feel like it married up very well yesterday in that game. And when you have a quarterback that's on one, it's definitely going to be a little bit of a struggle. And Pickens played great as well, to your point from earlier. Jonathan asked this. I actually want to take it into a different direction before we get out of here. He asked if, can playing a game on turf for the first time will allow for some adjustments next time. If you want to answer that, you can. But I want to more ask you, we saw another big time ACL injury on turf yesterday with Malik Neighbors for the New York Giants. OBJ came out and said, enough's enough. We've got to get rid of these turf fields. I know David Bakhtiari has been very outspoken about the turf fields. For you, what do you see? Is there an issue? Does it need to get corrected? Is it just it just is what it is? The NFL is never going to correct it. Where do you come down on that topic of conversation?
Addressing they practice on turf all the time, so they're going to be used to it. Now there's different kinds of turf, and like obviously MetLife, there seems to be a ton of injuries at MetLife. So
yep.
And I don't know, I don't want to, shame the brand because I don't know which system they're using. I think it's deplorable that NFL owners will change from turf to grass for the World Cup, but won't do it for their own teams. I think that's disgusting, but kind of typical, right? Money, cost saving measure. The problem with the turf, so for your fans, Andy, is that the turf, because of the rubber or the organic material they use now, that's the kind of the fill, it's soft. And so what ends up happening over the course of a practice or a game is that it gives more. It's like wearing like real spongy shoes. So over the course of a game, it fatigues your legs. And what happens as your muscles fatigue is that they don't fire at the same rate that they did when you were 100%. And when that happens, that's how people get injured, because, imagine you're trying to make one of these elite level cuts and you're not getting the same firing mechanics from your quad or your calf muscle that you're used to. When that stuff happens, other things have to compensate, and that's when you get these ligament tears or these tendon tears. And so it's one of those things that if you've ever played and you listen to the NFL, it really is one of the few things. There's a lot of things that go on between the NFL and the NFLPA because of the negotiations that you're like, whatever, like players aren't trying, they're not getting more than 48% of the revenue, so they're not trying to practice anymore, and it's kind of hurting the game. You go through this whole kind of whatever. The one thing that came up the last couple of years, and JC Tretter before he left, it's kind of exposed this, and I felt like it got swept under the rug, which was the NFL continued to claim that there was no discernible difference between playing on turf and playing on grass, and there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of studies that prove that to be patently false.
Yep.
And they were exposed, and JC Tretter did a good job of kind of putting this all out in the world for people to see. And somehow the owners managed to they ignored it for a couple of days and it was gone. But it really is a health issue. It's unfortunate, but the other thing, just so people know the economics, it costs a couple $100,000 to put in a new turf. You obviously have to maintain it, but you can use it. Let's say use it. The shelf life's 3 years. I don't even know.
Yep.
Right. You're spending a multiple of that every season if you have to renew the grass every single game. It's a money thing, and it's unfortunate, but I guess what did they just make in the new? How many billions did they just get in the new TV deal? 23 billion or something like that.
How much? What's the opportunity cost lost if Malik Neighbors tears his ACL? What's the how much would you give? How much would you give if you were the Giants ownership group to not have Malik Neighbors have his ACL torn right now?
Well, first of all, I'm sure they justify it. This is, you and I are both soccer fans. So imagine if they had to pay transfer fees on Malik Neighbors. I wonder if this changes.
Probably.
You know what I mean? I wonder if you could actually buy and sell players so the positional value was patently different than just a draft pick, or it was cold hard cash in your pocket. I wonder if this would change. Yeah, that's the opportunity cost of it. This is the hard part about the NFL, Andy. I don't know how many more people are tuning in to a Giants game or going to MetLife Stadium because Malik Neighbors is playing or he's not. The engine still keeps going. The NFL doesn't stop. And, for every player that ever thought that the world's going to stop when he quits, like, they don't happen, buddy.
I always have this beautiful, naive approach, Mike, that everyone is trying to win at the highest of levels and cares about, putting everyone in the best position to succeed. And sometimes I have to remind myself that that's not exactly the case in all situations. Mike and I are, of course, going to be back tomorrow. We're going to record our episode right after this and be back breaking down everything from this game and kind of going through things in a bit greater detail. Appreciate all the questions from everyone today. Mike, any final thoughts before we get out of the live show here?
No, just see you guys tomorrow. Looking forward to doing this every week.
Of course, follow him on social media at Mike Wahle 68. You can find me at Andy Herman NFL. Mike's been doing a bunch of other, film breakdowns as well, which you can find on his Process to Perform channel. But you also now can find those right here on the Pack a Day podcast as well. So keep an eye out for some extra stuff from Mike. As I mentioned, we'll be back tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.